My name's Dr. Kelly Sharp and I'm from Scotch International Education. We're working in strategic partnership with Scotch College Australia Grammar School, Vietnam. I've worked within the Australian education system for 16 years and can attest to the quality and rigour of an Australian educational offering. Joining me today is Ms. Rebecca Ball, who is the Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner to Vietnam of the Australian Trade Commission, commonly referred to as Austrade. She brings more than 20 years of experience across economic and industry development, trade, investment, tourism and education, both public and private sectors in Australia and overseas. I appreciate you joining me today for this conversation, Rebecca. I'd like to begin by inviting you to tell us about your journey back to Vietnam, because I understand you were here in the early 2000s, then returned to Australia and have since found your way back. Would you like to talk to us about your journey?
Well, thanks, Kelly. And at the outset, congratulations to Scotch International for your partnership here in Vietnam and being able to now offer your programs to Vietnamese students. It's a real privilege to be able to talk with you today about my journey, but also the importance of an Australian qualification in education. So I worked in Vietnam in 99, 2000, and it was then when working with the Ministry of Education and Training in Vietnam that I understood the importance the Vietnamese people placed on education and the drive and ambition of the people to proceed and develop themselves personally, but also to be able to support the development of their community and their economy, and help Vietnam develop. And in those 20 years since I've been coming back and forth to Vietnam, the place has just absolutely just blossomed, and there's so much of a bright future between Vietnam, and that's where Australia and our partnerships in education and training can really assist one another. But also just the sense of humour and the wonderful camaraderie we have between Vietnamese and Australians. It's such a pleasure to come back and work with our teams and be able to represent Australia.
That's great. I'd like to ask you a little bit about specifically about your education experience now. So Vietnam is regularly ranked 4th as a source country for international students who are studying in Australia, and this ranking has remained fairly stable for some time. So what do you think are some of the advantages of studying in Australia?
Sure. I guess the real unique factor is our proximity and the reassurance that gives Vietnamese parents that their children aren't too far away, but also the relationship we have had with Vietnam for such a long time in so many ways that when we are either delivering programs in Vietnam or whether there's an opportunity for Vietnamese students to go to Australia, there's trust and there's real deep mutual respect between our two cultures. So that's a real important basic foundation of our underlying commitment and support, I guess, and trust for one another. Also, when we survey our students, they tell us the 5 key factors about wanting to study or take an Australian qualification is the quality of the teaching, the reputation of the qualification, the actual personal safety and security that they get from the providers and the support that comes with not just the teaching, but the pastoral care provided by our institutions. And of course, the reputation of our system, which is backed by such a strong qualification framework, and the reputation of our providers who have got such a high standing globally. And while we rank 4th in the world after the US, the UK and Germany, with 13 of our universities in the top 200 globally, if we're looking at the proportionate size of our population compared to those countries, we actually rank a lot higher. So that's incredible for a small country with so many diverse education offerings right through from every stage, early childhood, the school system, higher education, that then leads to that very high ranking for the university sector.
And I think you certainly touched on there that one of the most unique advantages of Australia is probably the quality assurance that goes around the qualifications, certifications that are offered. I'm just wondering, in your opinion, what are some of the most popular fields of study for Vietnamese students across the different sectors? And then the second part to my question is, what skills do you think Vietnamese graduates will need to be able to participate in an international business working environment?
Sure. It's quite a diverse range, actually, which is terrific to see the diversity and interest from Vietnam. I mean, management and commerce are always very strong, as are IT, engineering and health sciences. Health sciences continues to grow, and I think we'll see more of that as a consequence of COVID. We also know that, you know, with the strong discipline of Vietnamese students, courses around mathematics and, you know, commerce continue to be strong, but we also see that in the fields of logistics, supply chain management, and digital marketing and media, they're also increasing in demand, which is a response to the changing environment. And it's not just higher education; it's also vocational education and training. I think there's great future potential and opportunities in working with the Vietnamese communities on that, you know, trades and technical skills that lead to strong employment outcomes, to be work ready and being part of that, you know, the ever changing global environment, which is increasingly digital.
Yeah, I completely agree. So Scotch College is based in Adelaide, South Australia, which is where Scotch International Education is also based. And one of the subjects that we find highly valuable for the students is the SACE research project, for exactly the reasons you just talked about, in terms of contributing to student work readiness and having students be really kind of competent global citizens ready to enter a marketplace. So we know that a number of students did study abroad in Australia during the pandemic, which has presented obviously some additional challenges for international students. Can you maybe talk to us about some of the ways or some of the supports that have been put in place for international students who have been studying offshore, studying in Australia during this time?
It's such an important topic because we place such a high value on caring for our international students. And that whole, I guess, the quality assurance framework of ensuring institutions are providing that support is backed up by government support, and the Commonwealth have invested over $200 million to fund initiatives in student welfare and ensuring that those still staying in Australia while they're having to be, remaining in Australia due to COVID, that they're really cared for by both health, wellbeing, mental health support services and relief packages, while they've been, in many cases, constrained by lockdown restrictions, depending on where they're located. But also each of our state and territory governments have been incredibly nimble and adaptive in providing support to international students. And we've been really mindful to work alongside our international community organisations as well, and our communities, our diaspora in Australia. So the Vietnamese community is really quite substantial across all our states and territories, and the government has been working alongside those community organisations to reach out to the students to make sure they're feeling connected and part of the community of their heritage, to feel that they're not missing home too much, and to enable and that keep that connection of not being too isolated. So we're really, really looking forward to our borders reopening, and really pleased to see, that we had a pilot with the Northern Territory, and now the South Australian government and the New South Wales government plans have been supported by the Australian government to reopen and reignite that connection. I was just going to say, it's a real, you being based there in Adelaide, being able to work alongside your South Australian government colleagues on being able to influence to what support students need, both when they're in Australia, but also how we can support them here in Vietnam. Your guidance on that is so critical, because you're the ones who are providing that direct link to the students, and we need to be able to respond to that. So that feedback's really important to us.
Switching gears a little bit, I'd like to ask you about the strategic focus of international education for Austrade.
Well, I mean, the priority for us is to keep our current and prospective students engaged and thinking about an Australian qualification. Absolute number one strategic, tactical, operational, daily focus of, choosing Australia as the preferred option for an education and training qualification. And we do that through so many ways, by way of major in-market promotional campaigns. We've had a strategic partnership this year with VTV7 on their IFO nightly show, season 7. We've worked on 22 episodes of promoting all the different aspects of an Australian training qualification, right through the school sector, through to higher education, and really having the chance to work on working with all the, many alumni who have studied in Australia to help them show their stories and, explain what they benefited from an Australian qualification, how it's helped them in their career, what they valued. And that's been such an important focus for us here in Austrade Vietnam. And in addition to that, we've been really, grabbing those gems of the stories of young alumnus who have gone on to do incredible things, including Ms. Chi Vu, who actually undertook her Australian qualification in Vietnam and, credits her Australian qualification with giving her both the confidence and the adaptability and lateral thinking to apply her degree in commerce to a career in marketing, which has seen her undertake really exciting career opportunities in both Singapore and now in the US in a very lead role with Google in global retail product development. So those sort of, I guess they're tactical, but it underpins our absolute number one focus, which is to keep our current and future students engaged and thinking about what next with learning. I've undertaken this qualification with an Australian provider in the school sector. Now, what can I do as a vocational training with Australia or a higher education? So it's that focus on lifelong learning, which is a real key for us. I think the other thing is about all the different resources we can provide while being in a COVID-constrained environment, ensuring everything we deliver online is accessible and in language. So our online Study Australia search engine of all the different courses people can consider based on their interests, being able to give that some depth and meaning is increasingly being enhanced so people can find their way really easily, and being able to showcase the benefits of those different course opportunities is really important for us through our Study Australia search engine. And then, of course, being able to, provide those stories on employability, how to get ready for work, how this course will assist you with your journey in your career prospects, and how we can help those wraparound services and supports, not just around the course itself. And of course, the other partnership is with our colleagues across immigration and home affairs, and working absolutely joined at the hip with them and our colleagues in education to make sure that we're all working together to ensure that we're positioning Australia and helping navigate all those complexities around visas, frameworks, the support to make sure students, their journey and their experience is really positive. And I guess the last thing I'd just like to say is, where we can help the students to reach in to us now that COVID is starting to not get completely under control, but we're learning how to live with COVID in Vietnam. Our team will be out there more visibly and more physically to be able to visit schools and visit education fairs and work much more closely with our education agents to help provide that face of Australia to reassure students and parents around the opportunities for studying in Australia. Absolutely key focus for the year ahead now that we're starting to come out of COVID.
There's some very, very lofty goals that you've just outlined there, but it was really interesting just to hear you talk about the benefits of an Australian secondary school education and how that education can feed into Australian tertiary pathways, because that's exactly the kind of strategic intent of Scotch College Australian Grammar School. We are looking to equip students not only for continuing their education in Vietnam, but also creating pathways into Australia and for us into South Australia, working in partnership with the SACE. The next I was going to ask you was about working with different stakeholders in the local market, but I think you just outlined quite a broad range of people that you're already working with. Was there anyone else that you wanted to mention that you are working with?
Well, the states and territories are really key partners in Vietnam. We've got on-the-ground representatives from a number of states, and we have a very strong relationship too with our South Australian colleagues, even though they don't have representative in the country. It's really key that we work together to ensure the support for the education sector, but also to ensure that we're presenting those different state opportunities and the providers from each of those states in a way that's joined up. That's really key. But key stakeholders, I mean, students, that campaign I outlined to you around the TV, the reach of that, it's over 20 million so far, and we've only delivered 14 episodes so far of a 22 series. I mean, this is so important to reach out and be sort of accessible to students and present a face that is, yes, the official face of government to give reassurance, but also to say, hey, we've been young once. We've all, had the difficult, decision making of what am I going to study, who do I want to be, and be sort of accessible and show that Australian, providers understand the student journey. We understand what students need, the challenges that they're facing when they're making those decisions, and also, choosing a foreign qualification is a big investment, and parents want to know that they're getting good value, and so it's a really important that we talk the voice of the student, the voice of the parent. We hear and we take feedback from the market, from our students, from the parents, but most importantly from the agents as well, who are absolutely vital, because they're in that very front face of interfacing with the students and helping them to make sure they've got the right information and the support to help promote Australia as a destination, or the Australian qualification, or the course, whether it's delivered in Australia or here in Vietnam.
Yeah, I agree. Very important. They are the face of getting these students into Australia or getting them into Australian education institutions. So I agree. I have two more questions for you. The first one is advice that you would give to education providers, so like us, education providers that are looking to bring an education into Vietnam to make it more accessible for families in Vietnam to access Australia and Australian education without, as an alternative to sending students offshore for secondary school. So what advice would you give to us or for other education providers for bringing an Australian education into Vietnam?
Well, coming back to the long-standing relationship of Australia and Vietnam in education, I would be suggesting that given the powerful impact of institutions such as RMIT, have been here over 20 years. I remember they were setting up when I was here back in '99, and leveraging the existing presence of whether it's RMIT or Western Sydney University or Swinburne and others who have got partnerships with providers here And that can go a long way, because it is the more that we build the number of offerings in Vietnam, that helps to become a means in itself to reassuring students and parents that we're serious about delivering here as, you know, transnational providers of education offerings at every level. And really those key things that students tell us, those 5 key things around quality and reputation and assurance and safety and security, that they resonate really strongly. The other thing, we've been working to deliver teacher training and offer the Vietnamese educators around pedagogy and helping strengthen the capability in the quality of and style of the way education is delivered by teachers, because that has really been incredibly well received, that approach of bringing the systems together to be more, I guess, adaptive as Vietnam continues to engage globally with so many international partners. And that in itself is helping to keep the heads turned of students, because if the teaching style is more aligned to the way the curriculum is delivered in Australia, then people will naturally consider Australian qualification because they've been learning it in a certain way that's familiar. So that's an area that we'll continue to work through. But providers who are new to the market, it's just being true, authentic Australian, style, and focusing very much on quality, reputation, and pathways for employment.
Very good advice. And my last question is actually asking your advice. What advice would you give to parents and students who are considering studying an Australian curriculum in Vietnam?
Well, without a doubt, parents want to be assured of the quality, and that their actual investment in the education they're choosing with their child, that it will be supported by the Australian government through that very strong qualification framework and the ESOS Act, which all providers need to comply with to be able to deliver their programs. So the actual reassurance to parents, I think the possible potential opportunity of having had a higher, a school education with an Australian provider, and then that wonderful ambition of wanting to study abroad for a higher education is absolutely key to helping to inspire students about, becoming their future brilliant self, and how an Australian qualification can help them realise their ambitions, or at least give them the confidence to dream. That's really important. It's about aspiration, inspiration, and helping them move through this really challenging time of COVID and having to be, adapting to learning online, and that there will be a future of blended learning in online, in person, and what skills that will unlock for their future development. So that's really key, that aspiration, inspiration, and the Australian service providers, including Scotcha, are part of that opportunity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I've taught in the Australian education system for a long time now, and I can certainly attest to the quality of a graduate of an Australian certificate of education, be it the South Australian or from any state. The quality is there. Rebecca, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. We really appreciate that you've participated in this today, and thank you again for all your advice and the information that you've provided.
Kelly, it's been an absolute pleasure, and really wish you all the best with the programs. I'm sure it'll be a great success here in Vietnam and here at Austrade in Ho Chi Minh City, and and across the country with our office in Hanoi as well. Happy to do what we can to support your efforts. It's wonderful to be here today, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Come on.
Oh, thank you.
Hang up live.